I made my video. Nobody loves Nick Fuentes more than I do. I'm
Mhm.
getting called problematic by many people for even trying to give a balanced view of a far right figure like Nick Fuentes.
Mhm.
Um, how do you
Who's
think?
calling you problematic? Like people in the comments or
Yeah, the
like?
comment section. The only people I listen to and base my entire identity off of are the YouTube commenters. Whoever happens to catch my algorithm.
Are they saying
Um,
like this is problematic? Is that like the language that they're using?
yeah, I mean, not that exactly, but there's a lot of people who are like to even like Nick Fuentes is a racist, is a terrible person, is a Nazi, and therefore to even like try and give a steel man of him is you're actually just uh trafficking in far right ideas. And I think
Mhm.
that's nonsense. I think that not addressing the ideas head on and not acknowledging the influence that people like Nick Fuentes have and are gaining is a recipe for it just continuing to grow in a direction that is even worse than it is now. But what do you think? Should I
I
have
definitely.
made a video where I even attempted to try and show some good points that Nick Fuentes made?
I mean, I guess I always believe in no one is black or white. I guess there could be someone who's just pure evil. It's I guess worthwhile to show that Nick Fuentes at least says that just hating someone on the basis of their race is a bad thing. But then does he actually like live off of that principle? That's the question. Um, I guess it's the balance between, are you just giving an honest representation of someone, or are you like subtly like whitewashing their image? And I think that that's the balance that you have to strike there. Of I don't think you should ever feel like you can't honestly engage with someone's arguments, and that's something I try to do in my videos. Is if I'm going to respond to someone, I don't just want to like point at them and be like, whoa, this is crazy, this is cringe, this is problematic, this is no, I want to actually like give my reason why I disagree with what they're saying, because
Yeah.
I'm like, what is even the point of, it's just like speaking to an echo chamber if you're not actually going to engage with what the person is saying. And I just don't find that intellectually interesting. So I would say, yeah, you should definitely, if you're going to engage with Nick Fuentes, be honest about him. And I guess it's fine to show that he isn't like the most evil a person could possibly be, but I feel like he's still, I don't know,
Has the potential to be that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Which was my whole
I
point in
mean,
that
he
video.
keeps praising Hitler like pretty regularly, and
Yeah. Yeah. Um
like I was watching a video with him and Sam Hyde, and they were bringing up decent points about the fact that like that the Trump administration is like really cracking down on like pro-Palestinian protesters. And I was like, yeah, this is a good point. And then Nick was like, I just wish they would take this crackdown and put it in the right direction. I'm like, no, that's not
yeah,
that's
right.
not what I think.
It's like that one guy from Jubilee who was like, "I'm in favor of free speech to get my authoritarian government, but once we have it, we don't need to
To
keep
get
it." It's
rid
like,
of free speech. Yeah,
yeah,
I made
it's
a
like
video about
screw
that as
you.
well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, that's fair. Okay, well, so do you think you saw the video? Do you think that I whitewashed, or do you think that I was an enlightened centrist, radical centrist, balanced analysis?
I don't know. I guess I have a centrist view of whether or not you're like I do think I don't know. I don't think clickbaiting like nobody loves Nick Fuentes better than me. I mean, I feel like I don't know. I think you should have been more leaning towards being critical while still showing the nuance of it. But I mean,
That's
I'm
fair.
of
Well, you
course
are a
gonna
leftist.
yeah, as a leftist, I'm not
All
gonna
of
be.
the
I don't
groypers
have
who
much
found that.
charity for Nick Fuentes,
Yeah,
but
all of the gripers who found that video accused me of the opposite of like, dude, this is so pathetic. The fact that you have to couch all this stuff. And
of course.
I came across a tweet from Nick Fuentes like a day after what he called Vivek Ramaswamy some like Indian dork or whatever. I'm just like, this is the kind of shit that, yeah, this is just I do not want. Look, I don't want cultists in my audience. I don't want the hyper Nick Fuentes fans in my audience. I don't want the hyper Destiny fans in my audience. I don't want the hyper Hassan fans in my audience. Okay, the only cultists I will accept are the J-Reg Horseshoe Theory podcast cultists. They are welcome.
What would you say was your like purpose behind that video, or what were you trying to achieve with that?
Because I think that there is a rising tide of far right sentiment that is growing. It is growing as a reaction to real things. For example, the degree to which Israel has influence over U.S. foreign policy is something that the far right is absolutely correct about. That's a big thing. The degree to which, like I said, there are critiques of liberalism from a right-wing perspective that I'm sympathetic to. It's not just economic problems with liberalism. There are cultural and moral problems of, just be hedonistic, do whatever you want to do, as we talked about. But like the way that so Nick Fuentes is riding that wave. And there's like two solutions here. The solution is we try and build up a little concrete wall to stop the wave.
Yeah.
And like, oh yeah, well, this will work. It's like, no, that wave is coming. The wave is going to hit the house and the city. So we have two options. We can either build a wall to prevent the wave, which is just going to collapse, or we can start planning on like being adaptive when the wave hits. Do we have ways to get out of this and to, move on beyond that? And to me, it's so obvious that you're not going to stop the wave of people criticizing Israel and people moving to the right by trying to suppress it and silence it. Like I keep bringing this up anytime I talk about this, but I've had several non-political normie friends of mine send me clips of Nick Fuentes, like just like, this is funny, blah, 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 whatever. And he's just growing in influence. He's going on mainstream podcasts, Bradley Martin, all these different things. He's debating Dean Withers. He's having conversations with more mainstream figures. The idea that we're just going to, just contain him through shame is ridiculous.
Well, and I think specifically these sorts of fringe figures, sometimes that's their marketing, is like, everyone is trying to silence me, and so the fact that they're trying to silence me must mean that I have some sort of truth that needs to be silenced, and so that you want to avoid playing into that. Do you think that there's like this far right wave? Do you think it's going to lead to like electoral sort of outcomes? Like, because I'm wondering, it seems like Trump's popularity is definitely decreasing, and I'm wondering, does that mean that we're then going to move to someone even further right than Trump, or does that mean the pendulum's going to swing back in the other direction? Because I mean, that's what I hope will happen. But I definitely agree with you. I mean, I was like, wow, this Sam Hyde Nick Fuentes video has like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views, whereas I don't think that would have been the case a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Well, to the first question, yes, electorally, I do think this is going to have dramatic implications, because post MAGA, you will have I think the next ascendant movement on the right are the Christian nationalists. I think they are best positioned to be the successor to Trump. They have all of the talking points and moral arguments. And there's I'm sympathetic to some ideas in Christian nationalism. The best one being, I think, well, we're a multiracial society. How in a multiracial society do you formulate a cohesive national identity? It's like, well, we ground it in a common moral framing, and like Christianity is, in my opinion, a good one, depending on how dogmatic and which interpretation you take of it. That's a permanent issue that actually plagues the Christian nationalists, and I'm going to do a video on that fairly soon. But the other thing, it's like it's also just a matter of when someone says something that's true, it should just be acknowledged as true.
Yeah.
And it's funny because in many ways, this is sort of a performative contradiction to what I often bring up about like the autism versus vibes, autism versus schizophrenia framing of like, well, it's very autistic to just say something that's like, you walk down the street and you see someone that's ugly and you're like, you're ugly. It's like, hey, it's just true. It's just true. It's like, bro, you got to contextualize that. And so,
well, and that's why I think autistic people struggle with social interactions, is because they're like, I'm just saying accurate things, and it's like, yeah, but you're not communicating them in a way that.
And I I had plenty of that struggle in my life of like, oh, it turns out that just saying what I believe to be true, which is like, oh, I'm being honest. It's like, actually, you're gossiping, depending on what you're talking about. So you thinking what you're saying is being honest with someone else is actually gossiping about someone else, among many other problems with that. But there is something to be said about, I'm going to validate someone's talking points to demonstrate to people that I'm not afraid. Like, if Nick Fuentes says something that's correct, yep, he's correct. And I'm not going to, but in the same way that if Destiny says something that's correct, I'm going to go, yes, he says it. Or if Hassan Piker says something that's correct, all these different things. It's like all of those people, if we did a Twitter and clip compilation of how horrible are these people, you're going to have, it's going to be a fairly close race, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've been really frustrated with Destiny being like, yeah, what I'm doing is bad, but have you seen what the Republicans are doing? It's like, yes, obviously what the Republicans are doing is bad as well, but I don't think that that's like this whataboutism is like, yes, it is good to joke about these children dying and whatever, or, you know.
Yeah, and Hassan Piker saying that, from, what does he say? From a utilitarian perspective, it's actually better, all things considered, if...
to rape rich women.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, that's going in the Hassan Piker champion spotlight.
And that's very ironic when he's like talking about how much he hates debate bros, and that's like the most debate bro statement I've ever heard in my entire life.
From a utilitarian perspective. Yeah. So this like hand wringing thing, it's like, I don't know.
I agree. Whenever I make a video about someone, if there's something that I agree with, I don't know. I think you can always give caveats if caveats are applicable. But if someone who I disagree with says something true, if me trying to deflect every single point, that just makes me seem like I'm ideologically captured. It makes me seem like I'm not actually engaging with what they're saying.
Yeah.
If I'm just like, this is a bad person, so I need to deflect every single thing they said because bad things come from bad people, so that I need to use my good wall to protect from the bad, you know?
Right. And I mean, I would say in my Nick Fuentes video, I was very clear to give plenty of caveats of, here's the example of his, I mean, I think the worst aspect of Fuentes is the degree to which he fosters creepy cultic behavior in his followers. Like, I think he there's the RKM pledge, rape, kill, murder. I will rape, kill, murder on behalf of Nick Fuentes. It's like, that's what he has his, 14, 15, 16-year-old followers say.
That's awesome.
Like, that's degenerate and insane and needs to be called out. But like,
and then they would say it's just like ironic, but
yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. Exactly. But in the same way that it's like, if black nationalists were saying like, oh, we need to exterminate the white race, well, we're just being ironic. Those Nick Fuentes fans would be like, no, it's really, it's like, it's hitting on a type of, so
like the
emotional
thing
chord.
where
it's like, okay, obviously, I don't think anyone's. I told Greg that, and he's like, yeah, like some groiper is like, this one's for Nick Fuentes before he rapes someone. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ. But the idea of like, no, we actually are loyal to Nick Fuentes over all else. Like, that's of course real. And the idea of like, some extreme leftist saying, oh, we need to kill billionaires or whatever. It's like, yeah, maybe you're not going to go out in the street and do it, but like, you absolutely believe in political violence to certain people or whatnot. And
well, I think I was going to bring it back to something that you said a little bit earlier. I think I kind of agree that Christian morality is generally good, but one of my issues is that I rarely see Christian nationalists living up to what I consider Christian morality, because like Jesus says in the Bible, you should treat any foreign citizen as if they're one of your own. Jesus says, it's harder for like a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven than a camel to fit through the eye of a needle or whatever. Yeah. So it's very, very anti-rich people, very pro, care for the poor and the needy and the sick first, treat any immigrants as if they're your native born. Like, these are principles that I feel like I connect with, but I don't see Christian nationalists really living up to these principles.
Yeah, well, there's definitely many interpretations. I mean, like, the Good Samaritan idea. Like, the Samaritans at the time were like the arch enemies of the Israelites. So the idea of like the Good Samaritan is actually more moral than the Israelites is an example of God's moral law and capacity exists in all people. There's plenty of, I'm sure, theological argument about to what degree does that then require, like you should do that in your conduct personally in your lives.
Sort of the charity versus using the state to enforce it or whatever.
Yeah,
but
right.
then Christian nationalists are usually very pro-state. Like it's like, why aren't they pro? I guess some of these Christian nationalists, they're pro like universal health care, but only for white people or something, or like.
Well, the Christian nationalist aspect, the Christian nationalists that try to make it a white identitarian thing, to me, that's enough. I don't see them gaining much influence because that's one of the, like, there are many, how do you say this? The cultural right is very multiracial, right?
Mm.
Like there's a lot of people who have right-wing morality that are not white. And
I think it's been increasingly moving in that direction. And that's why Nick Fuentes was sort of cozying up to Kanye, whereas you wouldn't have necessarily expected that. Yeah.
Well, but even that, like, and that's why I showed the clips of Fuentes saying the thing that I agree with 100%, which is it inverts the Christian message to say, like, screw the people who are not of our country and screw the people who are not of our people. It's like you can still have a proper ordering of things. You know, it's moral to love your own children more so than the children of other people, right? Like that's like I think anyone with kids would tell you that that's just basic common sense. And a valid moral intuition. And, you know, you can extend that mildly to like, well, I care most about my community, my local community, then my city, then my state, then my nation and all that. Like, I think it's perfectly moral to care more about not in like some cosmic sense, but like to feel a greater moral responsibility to the livelihood of your fellow citizens than the citizens of another country. I think that's actually a proper moral ordering, because then it's the idea of like, you got to help yourself before you can help other people.
But I don't necessarily even know if the Bible supports that from my perspective. And also
how much theology have you engaged in?
Not a ton. I mean, I was working towards potentially becoming a youth pastor when I was younger.
Really?
So I was raised in a very Christian household.
Okay.
And I think one of the issues that I kept running into is, like Nick Fuentes said in your video, he said like we should, you know, the Bible says to love everyone, but then it's like, but how do they actually live out this like loving everyone? It sometimes feels like this you should love everyone is just something that Christians sometimes just say, but then they don't actually like live it out. It's like, I love everyone, but I'm not going to do anything or take any actions to actually help these people that I, you know, purportedly love.
Yeah. Look, there's a great deal of using the Lord's name in vain, which is, I'm going to call my movement a Christian movement, when in reality it's a vehicle for my resent and, you know, anger towards all kinds of different people and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's not just saying, oh my God, like that's not the only way you can take the Lord's name.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Well, arguably that's not what that means. Like swearing is not what that the Bible verse referred to. Using the Lord's name in vain meant like, don't claim that what you're doing is on behalf of the name of God when you are just actually a self-serving person. And there is a lot of Christian nationalist elements to that. But I don't know. I think I think in its best forms, it can be good. And, you know, because you can make the exact same case with socialists and Marxist-Leninists. It's like, how much of this is because you genuinely want a better world and you're willing to work for it and you're willing to sacrifice and you're willing to improve the plight of the poor? And how much of this is you are bitter and resentful for whatever reason, and your target person is, it's the rich people that are causing all my problems? Which, of course, you know, there's always truth to that. In the same sense that illegal immigration causes problems, like endless open borders is not a good policy, in my opinion. I agree with Bernie Sanders. You know, a nation needs borders. It's a Koch brothers idea. It's a hyper-libertarian idea to just say, we're all just interchangeable economic units, and corporations can get cheap labor by outcompeting.
Maximizing the GDP doesn't actually necessarily maximize the happiness of everyone within the country.
Correct. And I
agree with that. Or it can be like, as long as you say that everything that you're doing is working towards the revolution and working towards the end goal of communism, you can basically do whatever you want to.
Oh yeah.
As long as it, you know, it's a very ends justify the means type way of looking at things.
Yeah. So,
but then, but utilitarianism is sort of ends justify the means, and then it's the I mean that then you get into should you believe in like
yes, but then there are people who can interpret them, interpret their means to be whatever they want. Oh, well, actually, I needed to borrow from the DSA fund to go on a concert because my mental health was waning, and in order to keep up the movement, I need to keep my mental health up. Blah. It's like you can play that game, whatever.
Or you think that what you're doing is working towards a certain end, but then it doesn't actually achieve that end. So then it's like, okay, well then was what you did actually moral, even if you thought you were working towards that end? Because it doesn't seem like communism has been created.
Yeah, I guess to bring it more to a practical generalization, in my mind, particularly the online politics space, the space that I interact with a lot, and the space that I regard as kind of the default space for a lot of political figures and influencers and stuff like that, although obviously not for everyone or all of them. I think it currently leans, my conception of it is it currently leans too far, too left, in that, like, the fact that Nick, like, I don't see any fundamental moral difference between the what would you say, the sociopathy of Nick Fuentes' worst tweets versus Destiny or Hassan's. And like Hassan is very mainstreamed. Not like to the legacy media, but the real mainstream media, which is kind of online and stuff. Like, Hassan's getting interviewed by all kinds of big figures and Pod Save America and all that stuff. And the media that is on the ascent, which is the new mainstream media, not the legacy media. There's an imbalance in the discourse, and I'm curious your thoughts on this. I don't know the degree to which you actually need people who are much too far to the left than optimal, and much too far to the right than optimal, in order to sort of properly establish like the Overton window in terms of like, because if we only have the far left and then like the moderate right, or we only have the far right and the moderate left, then this acceptable Overton window is going to seem too far in either direction. So maybe we do need agitprop, as Hassan Piker calls himself, like on the right and the left, to be able to like open up the space to have the fully fleshed out discussion and see what's best.
Yeah, I mean, that gets into like, should you censor people who are on the far right? I mean, as someone who's on the far left, I'm someone who wants the Overton window to shift to the left. So
right, but then okay, but you could see how someone who's in the middle or right is like, okay, well then that's not a pursuit of truth type thing. That's an ideological thing. Now, obviously you would say the truth is that would be better.
Yeah. My perspective is that my ideology hopefully aligns with the truth. But you would obviously disagree with that.
Well, I mean, I just like, do you think Hassan Piker is a net positive for society?
Oh, do I think Hassan Piker is a net on the discourse? Probably not. I mean, I think
okay.
My biggest issue is that it feels like the online political space is just so naturally attracting people who are very egotistical. And I think this applies to Destiny and Hassan and Vosh and Ethan Klein and all these different Fuentes. Yeah, obviously. Yeah. And I think the issue with this is that being egotistical definitely correlates with a lack of like self-reflection, or wanting to admit that you were wrong about things, or wanting to like have like nuanced discussions. It definitely gets more into like, I am 100% correct about everything that I'm saying, and I don't, anyone who's disagreeing with me is evil or whatever. And I think that's been my biggest issue, is I wish there was more humility and more like wanting to have honest discussions and less less of these cults of personalities, because it really is that these different political figures online are sort of coalescing into these weird cults. DGG calls himself the Daliban, and they're going around being weirdos. You said Nick Fuentes, his followers are doing the rape, kill, murder, or whatever. Hassan's followers will definitely come after you if you talk badly about him. And I wish there was just less of that.
Yeah. I guess the practical thing is the reason these people gain power and influence is because they're hitting on real issues and they're drawing their power from that. Again, like the Israel thing is benefiting both obviously Hassan and Nick.
Yeah, it's definitely not the popular. Destiny's position definitely is not the popular position right now, for sure.
No. And I'm actually interested to see how much he will even shift from where he's been, because I think the Israeli right is just so indefensible and growing in power that eventually even he's going to have to shift, but we'll see. But
and them simultaneously claiming they're the most moral army while clearly doing deplorable things. It's this is just not.
Yeah. Well, and this is okay. So this is again one of the reasons I like the meme of radical centrism. Is there's such a clear agreement between the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the Ilhan Omars and the AOC, although not AOC because she voted against that one bill to stop funding for, I think it was the Iron Dome. But Marjorie Taylor Greene and Ilhan Omar agreed. It's this is an area for unity along an important dimension.
That's fair, but the thing that confuses me is what is the right-wing criticism of Israel's actions, because it feels like if Nick Fuentes loves Hitler, aren't Israel sort of acting in a Hitlerish way? Why, what's so wrong about that? They're kind of acting like Hitler, and you like Hitler, so what's?
That's a good question. The annoying thing is I've seen, and as someone who is irony poisoned himself, no doubt, Nick himself is thoroughly irony poisoned, and there's plenty of people on the far right who are I probably agree with Nick on a lot, but I can't tell when he's joking or not, so I don't pay attention to him, and I don't really support him that much. That's actually what Dave Green, who's a far right reactionary that I talked to, said about Nick Fuentes. And so it's okay, how much of it is, does he actually love Hitler, or does he love the fact that him being pro-Hitler is a obvious fuck you to the main culture? And I'm extremely sympathetic to the idea that what we've essentially done is we in order to, in the same way that, for example, if the left wants to bring up wealth inequality, we can just say, oh, you're focused on wealth inequality and the the bourgeoisie. Who else said that? Joseph Stalin. You're a communist. Shut the fuck up. Whereas the same thing has been done on the right, where it's hey, I think we need a cohesive national identity. I'm not saying it's racial, whatever. Oh, you know who else talked about national identity and nationalism and wanting a nation state? Adolf Hitler. Shut up. And it's the same, it's the same nonsense. Now, I would say it's completely imbalanced, because you can walk around hammer and sickle on your hat, no problem. I've seen that in Los Angeles, and Hassan Piker had a literal. I'd actually be surprised. I don't know how surprised I'd be. I'd be mildly surprised if I saw Nick Fuentes sporting, at least with it from here henceforth. I'm sure he's thrown. Well, he does the Hitler salute all the time, but an actual swastika in the background, in the same way that Hassan had the hammer and sickle flag. There's just Nick Fuentes, I wouldn't put it past him either. I know.
But he'd probably play it off as a joke or whatever.
Yeah, well, but to that point is how much, it's the Kanye West Hail Hitler song. It's how much of that is Kanye when he says, I love Hitler? It's
is this a fuck you, or does he
exactly.
genuinely?
And it's also how much of it is the meme of the Christian idea of love, which is okay, yes, the archetypal Christian idea is you love everyone, even the most evil person, because they're all children of God. So yes, it's a non-controversial normative claim to say the Christian even has love for someone as bad as Hitler, blah blah blah. And then Kanye goes, I love Hitler, and it's
really leaning into it.
Yeah. So how much of it is memes and all that? It's irony poison. That's part of the problem.
Well, I think there definitely is, and this is one of the criticisms I've had, is if you get into any argument with a leftist, they'll call you a Nazi eventually, like, or someone will call you a Nazi.
Correct.
But I do think you can go too far in the other direction of, yes, there is a guilt by association type thing happening, but like if you listen to that guy in the Jubilee thing where he's like, I want to get rid of freedom of speech, I want an autocrat in power, I want to, jail people who just get, it's like, I don't know, it seems like it's pretty clearly these are fascist ideas, and I don't think there's really much irony to them. And then there's also there can also be people using irony to cloak, like they know they need to use the irony right now until they get to the point where they don't need to use it anymore.
Yeah, Sam Hyde is kind of the archetypal example of that. Which, by the way, I think there's much more darkness in Sam Hyde's soul than Nick Fuentes. If this is based on my intuition.
Why do you feel that way?
It's hard. It's a vibe, but there's something about Nick that I could see him growing up and being mature and being more pro-social. And I could very easily see a situation where, in the same way that Nick is talking about broad-based racial hatred, it's low IQ freak show behavior, using that language. I could see him going and being like, guys, when I was having people do like rape, kill, murder pledges, like that was autistic. That was fucking stupid. I was an edutainer, blah, blah, blah. I could see that happening.
Sam Hyde is more like set in his ways because he's older, or like
part of it, I think he's had a longer time to stew on his bitterness and resent.
I think Nick Fuentes is definitely smarter than Sam Hyde.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's fair. But specifically, because we brought this up in the context of why does Nick Fuentes hate Israel if he's pro-Hitler? I don't think he's pro.
You don't think he literally is pro-Hitler? You think it's
it's like
joke?
Yeah. Well, it depends on.
He might like certain of some of Hitler's ideas, but maybe not all of them.
Or it's like, why is he pro-Hitler? Because he genuinely loved the fact that first off, Hitler was like very what would you call it? Not critical of, like suppressed the Catholic Church and all that, which is against Nick's Catholic identity. So I don't know how he resolves that. Whatever.
It's really funny. It's funny when I see conservatives who are like talking about Israel and they're like, "Did you see that Israel bombed a Christian church?"
Yeah, right.
It's like they've killed thousands and thousands of Palestinians, but the second that they bomb a Christian church, now we're going to be like, "All right, this is too far."
Yeah, it's also very anti-Christian to care more about the lives of the Christian babies than the Muslim babies.
But didn't you say before they thought it is Christian to prioritize your people first?
No, I think, not in some moral metaphysical sense. I'm saying it's okay to love your children more than it's okay to save your children.
Like prioritize, but not on a moral. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And not in some metaphysical sense. And you still have a responsibility. It does genuinely upset me that there are people who are only now concerned with the genocide and the ethnic cleansing in Gaza, because it's like, oh well, the Christian church was bombed, or it's Christians. It's like, but that's an example where it's like, dude, I don't care what mechanism you need to get people on board with the right solution. Like, as long as they're on the right, as long as there's electoral pressure to get this changed, that's what matters. And that is sort of how I don't
want it to swing the other way and be like, all right, Holocaust Part 2, let's do,
Yes.
I just want Israel to stop, I don't want to.
Right. Well, arguably the greatest source of anti-Semitism nowadays is the actions of Israel, is the Jewish state doing these horrible things under the name the Jewish state. And then people associate it.
I think I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to avoid a Holocaust Part 2, then let's stop sending them fucking weapons to force them to not do all this bullshit.
And stop calling anyone anti-Semitic if they give any sort of criticism. Like, don't call Zoran Mamdani an anti-Semite when he clearly isn't one,
Yes, correct. Well, and that just, and again, that is you can see where people are sympathetic to Nick Fuentes, where it's like, oh, Nick is being called. First off, Nick, assuming anti-Semitism still has meaning, I think it's fair to say that Nick is, by any normal person's definition, anti-Semitic.
What do you mean by it? Like, how would anti-Semitism not have meaning?
Well, in the same sense of like racism or toxic masculinity has just been thrown around and abused. Like we just pointed out, like people like Zoran get called anti-Semitic or whatever, and it's just like
Yeah.
when it's syndrome. When you use a word so much, it just loses its meaning. And so
I think I think words that like are being dishonestly used, like I think it kind of gives too much power to the people misusing them to like destroy the concept, I guess. Like I feel like you can still say that toxic masculinity is like a thing that exists without needing to cede to the people who then say all masculinity is toxic or
correct,
whatever.
right. It is sort of just a practical like how to best communicate. I don't go. I've said this, a bunch of times before. Like, yes, toxic masculinity is a real thing. Obviously, I don't go around using that terminology in the same way that like I don't call people snowflakes. Like, even though I do believe there are emotionally weak people that some 70-year-old boomer would say this person's a snowflake, I just don't use that term because it's got the connotation of that. So like anti-Semitic, it's just like, Gabor Mate gets called anti-Semitic. All these Jewish people who are speaking out against Israel get called anti. It's just like it's such a to me to use that label of like, well, Nick Fuentes is an anti-Semite. It's like sure, is Nick Fuentes generalizing about Jews and being racist about Jews? Yeah, but then of course the people will point, his fans will point to the clip I showed of him saying I like Jews and I just need them to be Christian and all that. And like, I also don't want to pretend that that's not good that he is like caveating that, like, because I have talked to actual Nazis who say specifically Nick Fuentes is a fool because he thinks that
that they could reform or whatever.
Exactly.
When
that the problem
evil or something.
Yeah, right. The problem with Jews is that it's in their genetics, and the idea that you could, convert them to Christianity, they're going to retain their devious, lying nature or whatever. It's like, oh, okay. So who? I'm very glad that it's Nick Fuentes gaining the influence versus the other,
Sure. There's
Odin
always someone
worshiping pagan.
There's always someone worse out there. But yeah, I would say with anti-Semitism, it's just, I'd say the biggest problem is people throwing it around at anyone and anything, because it's the boy who cried wolf type thing where now the real anti-Semites, people aren't taking that seriously because Nick Fuentes can just be like, oh, well, everyone is called an anti-Semite for any reason. It's like,
correct.
Well, but I feel like you are one of the people who actually falls into that category. But I feel like it's on everyone else's responsibility to be accurate in using that label so that someone like Nick Fuentes can't just be like, oh, everyone's accused of this,
I 100% agree. That is precisely the problem with syndrome. When everyone's anti-Semitic, no one is because we have no way to actually identify it. But like,
that's also why I don't like calling people fascists. Like, it's definitely a leftist thing to call liberals fascists, and it's like, I think that liberals can, they can have, anyone is capable of like fascist tendencies, but I'm not going to call someone a fascist unless I feel like they're a far-right, ultra-nationalist authoritarian. Like, I feel like that's the definition of fascism, and I don't think liberals are fascists,
Yeah, well, even like, I in the same way that I think like we use the word. Well, see, it's interesting because I would agree that, in principle, we can say we'll have a label for someone who is too far right. Like, in the same way that I just kind of, enlightened radical centrist, I'll call someone that if I generally agree with them and I vibe with them. You could have what is the label for someone that's too far right or too far left or whatever. But because I think the term fascist has been thrown around so much, that's not actually the best way to functionally use that term. Because like you could describe, like for example, the desire for a cohesive national identity is labeled fascist. So if that's, like a cohesive culture is a dog whistle, which is, I think, the just stupidest fucking thing in the world. It's like, of course you need a cohesive culture so we can agree on common moral values that many progressives would agree on. Like, let's not throw gays off rooftops and shit like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, in order for communism to work, that requires a lot of cohesive, that's like kind of the ideology that requires the most cohesion, because you trust everyone else to put everyone's interests above their own. Whereas one of the issues with communism is that there have been people who aren't cohesive and then try to take advantage and rise to the top of the hierarchy or whatever.
Would you call yourself a communist?
I'd call myself a socialist, I think.
But not
I
a
think
communist.
communism is like one of those things where it's like a really nice sounding ideal thing, like hundreds of years in the future or something, but it's like I feel like there's a lot of steps you have to take to get to a society where people are all just like,
Sure.
getting along.
See, but this is an example of exactly what I was saying about the imbalance between the right and left. Like the swastika and the hammer and sickle are responsible for a great deal of evil and genocide.
Sure, yeah, I agree with that. And the ideal communism would be nothing like Soviet Union. Well, because I mean, like anarchists are communists as well, and there hasn't been like anarchist genocides or anything like that.
Sure, that's because they're just terrible at organizing, so they can't ever get anything done. But
like, would you agree that like the end goal of a society where it's kind of just like everyone is equal is better than the goal of like a pure like Nazi society where it's like only the white men are in charge and everyone else is subordinate to them?
Yeah, well, I view like Nazi as a particular historical manifestation of fascism. Mm-hmm. Fascism is like a type of government. It's a theoretical system that you could have intellectual debates about, blah blah blah, and all that. Nazism is the historical manifestation of it. So
I would say it's like fascism plus like the anti-Semitism.
Yeah, and the race focused thing, because Benito Mussolini, I saw it in a JREG video. There's quotes from Benito Mussolini explaining like fascism knows no race. Like you can have a corporate state fusion that is not racist or whatever. And prior to World War II, a lot of people described FDR's New Deal as fascist in not a derogatory sense, because prior to going to war with the fascists, there was not all of the connotation that fascist equals just, is just another word for bad.
Did they mean like fascist in the sense of like pro-state, the state having power?
Yeah, state, corporate partnership and all that. And so, like, for example, I'm sympathetic. Like, if someone calls himself, well, it depends. Obviously, it depends, but like someone can say, I'm sympathetic to I would say I'm sympathetic to some ideas in fascism, in the same way that I'm sympathetic to some ideas in communism. You could say, well, are you like, am I sympathetic to some ideas in Stalinism or Nazism? It's like, again, I wouldn't say that, because I think that's an example of being like autistic of like, well, technically, Hitler was against smoking and was in favor of like public workout programs and stuff. I might say it to be ironic and edgy, but like
he was pro paintings, and I like paintings.
Yeah, exactly. But like I do think there's a need to, like, there's many things that people would call fascist that are, whether or not like they could be described as fascist, like they're not bad. Like, again, the need for a cohesive culture, and for example, to say that some cultures are superior to others. Progressive hears that and goes, boop, 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 fascist, 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 fascist. It's like, no. The Jim Crow South was an inferior culture to, modern America, for example. Like the ability to even make moral claims to say some cultures are better than others, right? A culture that practices female genital mutilation is an inferior culture to my culture. And it's like, I'm purposely saying that in a way that is almost coded of like, that's what a fascist, it's like, but that's so obviously true. And anyone who has any, I would hope, moral sense would agree with that.
Except for my fellow... A culture is just like a collection of people. And if a collection of people is doing something
immoral, it's a collection of ideas.
Be...
It's not even the people themselves. It's the ideas and the software they operate on that could change while the people, stay the same. Now,
I do think that is an example of, because there's so many examples of people saying inferior culture, and what they mean is some sort of racial identity or some sort of like, those sorts of things. It makes people on the left uncomfortable, be like, yeah,
correct, but
understandably, but
yes,
there are better and worse ideas, I think.
Yes, but notice that that's exactly the same thing that the pro-Israel people will do when they say, oh, people are criticizing Israel's foreign influence over the United States. You know who else does that? Nazis, which is true, right? Actual Nazis will say, fuck Israel and all that. And I say Zog and all that Zionist occupied government, because it's a great meme that I think J. Rick properly identified. But it's not because it's like, oh, this is a dog whistle to Nazis. It's like, no, that's just a particularly true thing. And I don't give a shit that the people saying it are also a bunch of skinhead freaks. It's like,
what do you think you gain from like using this meme that is also used by Nazis a lot? Because I would agree
it's a good meme. It sounds like Evil Emperor Zurg. And it's a 3-letter acronym. It's easy to remember, and it points to a very real issue. And also, I would say technically, it's Zionist occupied, not Jewish occupied government. Which I believe there is an important distinction between Zionist and Jew.
Yeah, well, the issue is that a bunch of far right people say Zionist, but they mean Jew. But
and Hitler was also in favor of painting. And if I start painting, you know who else liked painting, Paul? Adolf Hitler. I do. I've had many discussions about my use of Zog, and that's a separate thing.
No, I do. I think it's important to point out. Well, I think there's a lot more Christian Zionists in like the U.S. government than
True,
there are,
exactly.
like,
yes,
Israeli Zionists. Yeah.
Yes, it's not Jews. It is Zionists. Like Ted Cruz
Zionism
is not a Jew.
Yeah, and Zionism is an ideology that anyone can hold.
Correct.
If you think that Israel should have a Jewish ethnic majority or whatever, I'd say that's what I define Zionism.
Yeah,
as,
right. But notice how they would say the exact same thing about. Well, that there are Nazis that there are people who are anti-Semitic who say Zionist, but really they mean Jew. Like there's Hassan Piker fans that mean Zionist, but they really don't like certain Jews. But anyway,
there definitely is. Well, I feel like on the left, it's been more of this weird like denial of anti-Semitism than like outright anti-Semitism. It's been more like, no, anti-Semitism isn't really a thing. But I think it's based on what you were saying before, of that so many people are weaponizing it in false ways that they then don't want to give like any credence to the idea of anti-Semitism. But I feel like that's going too far in the other direction.
Yeah, exactly.
I still don't think you should pretend that anti-Semitism isn't an issue. And I've seen people being like, oh, well, Jewish people have like a lot of privilege in America right now, so that's why we shouldn't care about anti-Semitism. It's like, Jewish people had a lot of privilege in the Weimar Republic. Like, that's not really...
Yeah, look, I have been, as you know, I think I've already said this today, very much influenced by Jordan Peterson. And his whole point is, like, all of the worst things in history were done by human beings, and you're one of them. So the idea that what happened in the Weimar Republic and what happened in the Soviet Union, what happened in all these different places couldn't happen here is delusional, and is precisely the kind of attitude that increases the likelihood that it does happen. And this is, however much people doubt it, that is the motivation for a lot of these things. Like, I do genuinely believe that by pointing out the true and I would say moral things that Nick Fuentes sometimes says, even when he contradicts himself, that is ultimately serving the end of like trying to turn the temperature down on the extremism of like, yeah, let's give credit. If Nick Fuentes is going to say, or anyone is going to say something that is just on the face of it morally true, like that, it's an inversion of the Christian message to have broad-based racial hatred.
Yeah.
Like, good. Give credit to that and encourage that behavior. And if more people did that, if more people felt like they could do that without getting backlash, then maybe people like Nick Fuentes would have a greater incentive to lean into it more and say, I noticed that when I, condemn all the skinhead autist freaks in my audience, not that all autists are freaks, me being undiagnosed most likely, but I will never confirm or deny. But
I've been wondering if I might
we're all on the spectrum somewhere. We're all on the spectrum. But like, if Nick Fuentes sees that he is actually getting credit for condemning the bullshit parts of his audience, that creates the incentives for him to lean into it more. And I could be playing the fool here. And
I agree with like the granular stuff that you're saying. I think it's more like the framing of saying like, nobody loves Nick Fuentes more than me, and sort of trying to play like a middle ground type perspective with someone who I think is very immoral generally. Like, I think if I were to make a video criticizing Nick Fuentes, like I probably wouldn't make a video praising him. I'd make a video criticizing him. But like you're saying, if I were criticizing him, I would make sure to be very clear about the things he's correct about, because if I just say he's an evil Nazi and we just need to not listen to anything that he's saying, that's a perfect thing for groypers to then come in and be like,
Exactly. Here's
see,
proof.
see, this is proof. They're all just trying to shut him down. The system's
Yep.
trying to, yeah. So I think we definitely agree that actually engaging with the merit of what people are saying is the most important thing.
Right. And the fine line is, yeah, how do you do without sanitizing? But even that, it's like, I agree if I made a video that was just, here's all the things that he says are great, blah, 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 whatever, and not qualified,
Uh-huh.
because that would be dishonest, because I would be purposely omitting true information.
Yeah.
But the metric needs to be
Yeah,
truth,
the
not,
lying by omission thing is interesting, because you obviously can't say everything that a person has ever said when you're representing them in a video. I guess it's kind of like the overall narrative of the intention with making the
yeah,
video.
but it needs to be balanced. Before we wrap up, do you have any other topics or things you wanted to discuss at this point?
I guess I was curious about, like, a lot of times you criticize like wokeness. I'm curious like how you define
Yes, the woke
wokeness,
mind
or
virus.
yeah, and what do you think is like too woke,
How do
or
I define woke?
yeah, or like what exactly are you criticizing when you say the woke mind virus?
Well, I would say woke broadly means too far left. More specifically, though, the behavior would be people weaponizing identity politics to silence discussion around a
Mm-hmm.
certain issue. So, for example, if someone said, "Paul, you're a white male," and so the fact that you made a video, even though it was balanced, this is an example of giving a balanced view of someone who's evil is ultimately working on behalf of them. Therefore, you're evil by approaching it from a neutrality perspective, right? And if someone said, "Paul, as a white male, you don't suffer the consequences of Nick Fuentes gaining power," or whatever like that, and therefore you shouldn't do this, I'd be like, that's woke. That is the woke mind virus at play here. Using identity politics to censor, and like the woke right, which I love. The woke right's one of my favorite discourses, because it's
Uh-huh.
James Lindsay trying to call basically people who are critical of Israel on the right. They're getting labeled as being woke right, when in reality, or when in a much, in my opinion, more obvious manifestation of this is like someone like Douglas Murray telling Dave Smith, Dave, you mentioned Paul Wolfowitz, who is this neoconservative, I believe the yes, deputy secretary of the Department of Defense under Donald Rumsfeld, who's an archetypal neocon. He has a Jewish last name, and Douglas Murray was like, the fact that you bring up Paul Wolfowitz, who has a Jewish last name, means you're sort of giving a wink and a nod to all the Jew haters in your audience. It's like, are
Uh-huh.
you deranged? Like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about? And
Or,
that's,
or like wokeness is like cancel culture, but then people on the right trying to silence anyone who disagrees with them is the same. Or
oh yeah,
like I feel like the people who were doing cancel culture before the left was doing cancel culture was those like moms for whatever who would be like, Harry Potter has demonic imagery in it, we need to boycott, and
yeah, that's a little bit different. I wouldn't call that, like, Libs of TikTok, for example, is a disgusting example of of right wing cancel culture, where there's this one video of this lady at a Home Depot who, like a lady working at Home Depot, like this is a working class woman who wrote
Mhm.
something like, "Oh, it's a shame that Donald Trump didn't turn his head at the last moment," or blah blah blah, whatever.
Yeah.
Which is like, oh my God, she wished that Donald Trump was dead. It's like, you know how many fucking conservative boomers, if Joe Biden fell down the stairs, would have made a joke about like, oh, shame he didn't fall down one more stair. It's like,
Yeah.
and Libs of TikTok went and found this lady and tried to like,
Get her fired
yeah.
from her job,
And I
and
think
yeah.
she might have successfully did it. To me,
Yeah.
that's cancel culture, specifically like individual people, like in this weird kind of struggle session thing, different from like I'm trying to cancel like Harry Potter, or like I'm trying to censor certain books or whatever. It's like I guess that you could call that the worst aspect, the more pertinent bad aspect of cancel culture is like Maoist struggle sessions via digital media of like, I caught you on video doing something out of context. I will ruin this individual person's life or whatever.
Yeah.
And Libs of TikTok does that. And I think that's disgusting. That's woke right behavior.
Well, I think I probably agree with you on a lot of these criticisms, but I feel like it's not how I like my perspective of what woke means is being aware of like systems of oppression. I would say that was like the original definition of woke, and basically there's like the intersectionality thing of like systems of oppression intersect with each other and cause different experiences for people. I feel like the issue comes when you then take systemic analysis and then you like use the identity fallacy and then say you are this group, so therefore you don't get to have an opinion on this, or you don't get to have a say on this. It's just like misrepresenting how systemic analysis works, because that's not like saying that white men on average have more privilege in these sorts of ways doesn't then mean every white man should never be listened to or have opinions on these sorts of things, you know?
Easy for you to say, white male.
Sure.
Yeah, I get it. My philosophy is words mean what most people think they mean. So I could say the word FAG and say, well, you know what it really means is a bundle of sticks and twigs, or bundle of sticks and twigs,
or a British
or
cigarette.
a British cigarette, right? But
yeah,
that's not what it actually. Now, you know, if a British guy actually said it, you could point out like, hey, he didn't know. But woke is entered the mainstream so much that it like this is what it means in practice. And so the original definition is sort of not really relevant to how people use it now. And that's why I'm willing to use it derogatorily, as, you know, against the woke left and the woke right.
Yeah. I've definitely criticized things for being like overly quote unquote woke. I feel like
too far left.
I don't think it's too far left though. I feel like it's taking these genuine leftist concepts and then bastardizing them in ways that are illogical. Like, because I think that I believe that intersectionality is a genuinely useful tool to analyze society, but I think that when you then take that and then apply it on an individual level and use it to bash someone over the head, that's what I take an issue with.
I see what you're saying. You know what I've never connected this in my brain before, but you just connected it. I've always conceptualized, like too far left, too far right. But I can completely understand how if you have two Christians who disagree, the one Christian wouldn't agree to the framing, well, this is more Christian than the other. It's like, no.
It's too Christian, yeah.
Right. Because the true two Christian would be like, there's no two Christian. The true Christian would be like true loving, serving God, not, you know, being dogmatically fire and brimstone and all that.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of dogma, I suppose. I guess when I say too far left, I mean it's too dogmatically left-wing, the dogmatic implying you're taking a certain axiom too far beyond its logical.
You're applying it in ways that it doesn't logically make sense to use. Yeah,
it's decontextualized from its proper environment.
Or I think like hypocrisy is also a big thing. Like leftists always talk about rehabilitative, restorative justice. Like even if someone murders someone, they can be rehabilitated eventually. But you said something problematic on Twitter 10 years ago. Like, no, now your life needs to be over. It's like, how do you square these two concepts? They're totally in contradiction with each other.
Yeah, I think that in particular, a lot of it is it's a lot of privileged people who view criminals as not having agency. They're more like
it's like the bigotry of low expectations.
Bigotry, yes, exactly. Where it's like,
it's like they're black. What do you expect them to do? It's
like,
you know?
Exactly. Which yes,
yeah.
So I use words in the way that I think they'll be most effective, and that doesn't always mean that I can explain exactly how. Like with Zog, or Nobody Loves Nick Fuentes More Than I Do, or Woke, and all that. But
I think you do things to be provocative. And I think
I
that I think it works in gaining you the attention of people who want to hear what you have to say. But then I think the reason why you get all these left-wing people wanting to listen is because they're like, okay, it seems like he's being genuine here, trying to actually engage with the arguments.
The reason I feel entitled to be ironic in that way, there's a variety of reasons. Number one, it's sort of like we live in a world where no matter how careful and curated what you say is online or whatever, anyone can and eventually will clip something out of context and rake you over the coals for it, or clip something you said in one conversation and then another thing that like you appear to contradict yourself in another conversation, even though it's like if I said I'm against liberals and I'm for liberals or whatever, but like liberal means left wing to a right winger, and liberal means right wing to a left winger. So the exact same word can mean the opposite things. So someone
or it means individual freedom. Or
exactly.
Or it means pro-capitalism, or it depends on what the context.
So the environment we live in is that I'm going to be clipped out of context. I'm going to be, shit on, and I'm also going to be hypocritical and say stupid things just because I'm imperfect and all that. Mm-hmm. So, like, this is the world we live in. Of course, I feel no obligation whatsoever to have this. Let me try and be as straightforward and clear as possible because that's not the environment we live in. I'm going to lean into it and say, like, I'm someone who's actually okay and embraces the messiness and imperfection of, okay, well, I use one word here and I'm being ironic in one context. I'll talk to you maybe in a different way that I talk to like JJ, who I've argued with 1,000 times, and I'll call him names. And this is the first time we're talking, so I'm not going to do that to you. And it's like, it reflects the genuine messiness and complication of communication.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I think I enjoy you and J-Reg is that you use the irony and the sarcasm and all that. But
yeah, well, and it's like also you can still generally tell if it's being used for good or for evil. Like Sam Hyde, I think does have the darkness within him and is like not good. With
we all love Jews, don't we, guys? We
love
right. Jews.
Whereas when I say nobody loves Jews more than I do, it's like it's the Donald. First off, it's the Donald Trump thing of nobody loves X more than I do. But it's just so obviously different because you can contextualize it and all that. And like I'm not that irony poisoned. I'm some irony poisoned, but like anyone who watches my stuff can get a pretty good sense, I think, of where I'm coming from.
I think with my content recently, my goal has been, I definitely am still coming from a leftist perspective, but I always try to be as reasonable and as nuanced as possible and try to de-escalate things, I guess. Like I don't like the fact that the online political sphere is like, it seems like the norm now to do death threats and doxing attempts and all this shit. It's like, can we dial the intensity down like a couple notches and just try and, and I also try to be persuasive and realize that if you're just preaching to a choir and you're just like, this is a problematic systemic injustice from, it's like, that's only going to appeal to people who already agree with you. So I guess my goal is to like bring people over to my side in a convincing and nuanced way, I guess,
Yeah. It's, if the goal in democracy is to win a me more, to get people to your side, you have to appeal to in some sense, the average person, so to speak.
The normie, and
the normie. Yeah. And it's like, I promise you, the average person, the norm, even if they are like, man, I really like this idea about, super environmental protections or like socialism and all this. It's like, they don't have all of this like pre-wiring of like, well, someone said cohesive identity, that's fascist. Someone said redistributive wealth, that's communist. It's just like, they're very let me just kind of listen to this guy, and the first thing I'll do is check their personality. It's like that
controversy with the Sydney Sweeney jeans ad. Like to your average person, they're like, why are people saying that this is
exactly
fascist? This looks crazy.
And it's funny. I have I suppose I have not the contrarian, but the unexpected take, where I actually don't doubt that, because a savvy marketer can see the rise of like the right wing kind of shifting culture.
Marketers are pretty smart generally. I feel like they know what they're doing. Every word is carefully chosen.
Yes, and I would not be surprised if in the like, obviously, blue jeans, obviously, okay, that just works on the face of it. But I wouldn't be surprised if part of the thought process was like, this might this might cause a controversy a little bit because it's like as soon as
I
you
think it
mention
was
genes
I
and
think it was a
genetics-
rage. I think it was a rage bait.
100%.
I don't think the people at American Eagle are like ideological Nazis.
exactly,
And they're like,
exactly,
yes, it's
exactly.
time for the white ethno state. I think they were like
Exactly.
this. And I hate when that sort of thing happens because then, people on the left then fall for the rage bait. And then that's just a super easy dunk for conservatives to be like, look how crazy people on the left are. And that's why I want people on the left to be more strategic, pick your battles,
Yes.
don't just instantly jump on something and be like, they're all Nazis. Because rhetorically, that just looks really bad.
I want a healthy, effective left, particularly to advance good economic policies. Not that I agree with all of them, but a lot of, some of the core basic ones. And the best thing for the left, in my mind, is to eradicate the woke mind virus from its ranks and cure the body.
Sure.
So,
And I might
see.
I might partially agree, but I think
depending on how you define it.
I think being woke is good. I think weaponizing wokeness is bad, is what I would say probably.
That's fair. We agree. All right. Thank you very much, Ryan. I appreciate it.